I known this when I was in my 20s, I probably would have done this sooner. And that is what I am hoping you get from this. And this means freedom, self-awareness, expression. And this to me means you can be more than one thing. I'm Jasmine Bowdry, and you're listening to And This Podcast. I've never shared this on the podcast or actually any platform for that matter, but I felt that this topic was super important and that it was something that is not discussed primarily in the Black community among women over a certain age. And honestly, not even a certain age, just in general, it's not something that's discussed. And so I recently froze my eggs as a mature woman, and I don't know how I'm feeling about it, if I'm being quite honest. Just to kind of take you guys back on how this even came about, right? You always hear, women have a biological clock, and we do, right? The number of eggs that we are born with are the number that we're going to get for our entire life. And once you reach an age of where you start your menstrual cycle, you lose those eggs every month unless you become pregnant. Funny enough, when I was younger, I always thought, I'll be married, have kids in my 20s, right? Absolutely. No, thank you. I'm actually grateful that I didn't, but that's what I thought, right? That was my mindset. And so freezing eggs was like never a thought for me, right? I'll be fine. The husband will come. The kids will come. Your parents even tell you all of that stuff will happen in time. But nobody talks about when it hasn't happened and you're like over the age of where they consider you geriatric, which is 35, right? Nobody talks about that. And so as I got into my 30s, I was in a long-term relationship, thought that was the person that, I would eventually marry, have children with. And when that relationship ended, that's honestly what gave me the momentum to start my business. And so then I just went in hustle mode for about 7-8 years. To give you from a timeline perspective, early 30s, in a relationship that ends. Now I have to start over. I moved to a new city. I started a new business, and now I'm just focused on growing that. So I've spent a lot of my early to mid 30s business building, right? And so then I looked up one day and I said, oh, well, bitch, you about to be 38. What are we doing about these eggs? And so I had a consultation. I went to a fertility doctor. They did some testing. They tell you what your AMH is, which essentially tells you like, where are you kind of on the spectrum of, are you still like making eggs, essentially, right? Got that done and I was good, right? Like I was on the kind of like in the middle of the AMH count, but like on the higher end. So she's like, no, like you're still good. And she actually gave me like, this is the number of follicles you have in this ovary, and this is the number you have in this ovary. So I'm like, oh, okay, we still cooking, right? The eggs are still being made. They're just not cracked. I'm like, okay, boom. Then she hits me with like what the investment of egg freezing is. And I say, it's like, what now? So I think at the time, maybe about $25,000 to $30,000, not including the cost to store them. And at the time, being a full-time entrepreneur, like, do I want to make that investment right now? Again, in my mind, the husband will come, the baby will come, all of those things will come. So I decided to hold off. Fast forward, a few years, I revisit the thought again. I had spoken with a different doctor and they were like, well, do you plan to have kids? And I was like, at this stage, it would be cool. But if that's not what God has for me, then I'm okay with it. And he was like, you should really still consider like freezing your eggs, like if that's a possibility for you to do so. Let me consider this again. And so I reached out to another fertility doctor not the same one that I had before, but essentially still did some of that initial testing. Now, this time, when she told me my follicle count, it was significantly lower. And I'm like, oh, shit, the eggs are dwindling. I remember it being like a super emotional conversation with the doctor because it was such a drastic shift from what the previous doctor maybe 2 years ago had told me. And I'm like, wow, like I thought I had more time. You know, when she told me that, super emotional, not that there weren't any there, just it's gonna be harder. And if you're gonna do it, like you need to do it now because this is just going to continue to decline. And so I'm like, damn, okay, now we gotta go through the mental shifts of starting an egg freezing process. I was ready to make the investment. I was in a better financial position, being comfortable making the investment. I really had to decide, like, is this something you actually want to do? And for me, the decision wasn't necessarily, do I want a child or children right now? But if I do in the future, it is better for me to have done this now and have eggs to be able to, you know, pull from, essentially, versus waiting until, you know, I meet a partner or whatever that looks like, and then not having that opportunity. So egg freezing for me is more, it's like insurance, right? It's like, it's there. You may need it, you may not. There are thousands of women that, you know, are over a particular age and get pregnant naturally, right? So it's not that it can't happen. So for me, it was more of like, I would rather have a peace of mind knowing that I have some stored away just in case I do want to make the decision to be a mother in this way. I started the process, which was the first round of egg freezing. So it's, you know, it's called like cycle 1. And so that is where you are essentially, you know, taking hormones, like, and you have to inject the hormones yourself. You are, you know, on different medications, and it's really for them to get your body ready for the retrieval process. The entire process is probably like a month long because it's also based on like when you have your menstrual cycle and things like that. Started the medication, gave myself the injections and all of those things, and then had the first retrieval surgery. With that, they were able to get, I think, 13 eggs, which, you know, for my doctor, she was like, you did really, really good. I didn't expect that. That's great. But only 9 of them were considered like good enough to be frozen. I got 9 from that. Now, typically a fertility doctor will tell you that they want to get at least 20 within a cycle. And that's the difference of when you get older, is that you don't have as many, right, at one time. So had this been a process I did at 25, I probably would have had 30, 40, 50 for them to pull from, and they could have pulled 20 just in one cycle. So with them only being able to get 9, she's like, we're gonna have to do it again. And I'm like, damn it. Like, it is, again, you are being pumped with hormones. So not only am I on this different medication, I do not like needles, so I have to inject myself. You're bloated all the time. You are moody and cranky and hella irritable. And I'm like, gosh, I have to go through this again. And when you're done, like, the bloat just doesn't come down. You're like bloated for months. So you're trying to squeeze in your stomach and it just never goes flat until a few cycles after. Just from a health perspective, I am anemic. I have fibroids. So I was not in the best health shape that I was previously. And so went through this next cycle, and they were only able to get, I think, 5 that were good, right? So again, now you're a little bit discouraged and disheartened, like, well, damn, why did y'all got 13 before? You got 5 now. So that only leaves me with what? 15, 14? Like, I'm still not at 20. But at this point, I'm like, I can't go through another cycle of this. So we'll be good with the 15, freeze those off, and, you know, we'll just see what happens. Now, here's the thing with egg freezing. You don't know if the ones that you even got are good until they're able to test it with sperm. And that's kind of where I am today. I am not in a relationship. So have y'all seen Being Mary Jane? Sidebar, like I recently watched Being Mary Jane, like as this grown woman, and it is just such a totally different like perspective of when I watched it 10 years ago. And I'm like, wow, I am a real life Being Mary Jane episode. Like I literally was watching her inject herself. She was going through the egg freezing process. She ended up using donor sperm, had a baby, and then got married. And I said, Lord, is this what this is going to be? Is this what this is like? I mean, this is kind of where we're headed. So we'll see. But I am now at this crossroads of donor sperm, meaning that it's a person I don't know. I would not want to know, but I'm like picking off a list of like criteria of things. And then they would, mix that with my eggs and then implant that in me to, hopefully have the chances of getting pregnant. Now, here's the thing. There is no guarantee that just because you froze your eggs, you will now conceive. Like there can be chances that it doesn't work. We saw this, if you guys watch the Kardashians, we saw this with Courtney and Travis when she was trying like with IVF, right? And so it doesn't always work. And so I'm still at what I would call like a step 2 of, do I want to use donor sperm? Do I still want to wait and see, if a partner comes in the next year? Is there a friend that, I trust and we can just co-parent together? We don't even have to do the bruh, just give me the sperm. We gonna mix it up. And, it's what they used to call back in the day, test tube baby. Like literally that's where it came from. And so that's where I'm at with the process. And here's what I want to share. Had I known this when I was in my 20s, I probably would have done this sooner. And that is what I am hoping you get from this. If you are a young woman and you are with the mindset of, I have time, I don't have to think about that right now. That's what we all think, right? And then life comes at you fast. And the next thing you know, you may not have an opportunity. I know women that were like, I wish I would have done it because now I physically can't. Like I don't have any egg. So they had to look at, adoption or surrogates. And so if I were in my 20s, this is something I absolutely would have done. The other part of that is a lot of companies help pay for these services. So look into your employer benefits and see if, fertility is an option that's a part of your benefits package so that you can get some of those expenses covered. I remember watching, sometimes I watch a little bit of like trash TV and reality TV. So one day I was watching the Kardashians and I don't remember what season it was, but I was watching the season of the Kardashians and there was an episode where Kris Jenner was talking to Kendall, who is the only one that's not a mom yet, right? She's on her modeling career, got her tequila brand, and Kendall may have been like 27, right? I don't know how old she is now, but at the time of this episode, she was probably like 26, 27. And Kris was like, you need to start thinking about freezing your eggs, right? And I was like, my mom never talked to me about freezing my eggs in my 20s. And this seems to be something that's common within the Black community where it's just not discussed. Where in other communities, they're having these conversations like they know, hey, this is the youngest you're ever going to be. Get them out now so that you can have them. If you do decide 20, years later that you want a child, your eggs will be that at the age of a 20, plus year old, right? So they're in a healthier condition. And I wish that these were conversations that we had more about in our community, which is why I am sharing, because it's not something that is often discussed. So look into your employers, look and see if this is something that they cover. If you don't have that, if you're potentially an entrepreneur, make the investment if you potentially know that you do want to have a child. Another thing I want you to do is release the shame. And what I mean by that is, as I was giving myself injections, like I literally felt the shame of, damn, what is there something wrong with me? Like, why am I doing this? Girl, you is not about to get emotional, okay? Not with this beat. Hell to the no. We don't do it. Get it together. I had to release the shame of, what's wrong with me? Why am I having to go about it in this way? Because you think that you're going to have a partner Mm-mm. You think that you're going to have a partner that you're doing this with, right? That you're not having to do it this way. But I want you to release that. And I had to release that. I had to talk to my therapist about this in so much depth of, well, does this mean that I'm trying to like take over what God is doing by having this? And if I decide to become a single mother, like, what does that really look like for me? How will my life change? What is the investment of that? Like, I can just go now. I can pick up and go on a flight tomorrow. Am I going to be able to now do that, with a child? There are so many thoughts and decisions that I had to make to even come to the decision of freezing my eggs. But I want you to release the shame, because I know that there is somebody out there that may potentially be going through this, thinking about this, wanting to do this, and they feel like it's not supposed to be this way. But I want to empower you, because this is how I had to empower myself, is that we now have choices, right? We have the choices to be entrepreneurs. We have the choices to make as much money as we want to make. We have the choices to go into many different career fields. And you have the choice to become a mother in this way, if that is what you want. I don't think biblically, I am not one that professes to know every single scripture in the Bible, but I have not heard a scripture that says you have to conceive in this way, right? I think that the beauty of God is that he gives us different options and abilities for the desires of our heart. And I feel like if this desire matches with his will for my life, it will be done however it is supposed to be done, whether that happens naturally or whether that happens through, this process. I can meet my husband tomorrow and I'm like, okay, boom, we get married in 6 months, babe, the eggs is already ready to go, right? It could be that, or it could be, hey, it's been a year, I'm still single, I'm not married, but I am making the decision that I want to be a single mother. I have these that I can pull from as a reserve to be able to go about being a mother in this way. So I want you to release yourself from the shame that you may be feeling of going through this process. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with me. It is just, different. It's just a different path to where you're trying to go. And I think that that's okay, that there is nothing wrong with that. So this was a different episode. This is, not about style. This is not about retail. This is not about strategies to, help you grow, but this was about life. And I'm human, right? Life happens. And so I wanted to use this platform and my voice as a way to educate, because I wish that that I wish that, this was something that was brought to me when I was in my 20s. I wish that I did act on this when I was, 35, 36, 37. And so I wanted to share this side of me with you, which is not something that, I often do transparently. I have kept this part of my life very protective, very personal, because I didn't want others to not only try to influence my decision, but allow them to share their opinions on what I should be doing with my life, if that makes sense. There are a lot of trolls that like to be on the internet saying this and that and the other. And I just really didn't want to open myself up for that. But I think that this is an important conversation to have, because it is not something that I've seen many Black women of a particular age share. And so I hope that this was helpful to you. Please leave your thoughts, comments, questions in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening, definitely rate and review this episode. But feel free to also shoot me a DM on Instagram at Jasmine Boundary. Like, let's continue to have the conversation. So I hope that this was helpful. I will see you on the next episode of And This.
Hey, have you been liking our videos? Have you been tuned in, but you have not yet subscribed? Make sure you like, comment, review, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. All you have to do is click the subscribe button.